What is up, you guys? Hope you're having an awesome day. I'm your host, Ayman Hassan, and welcome back to another video. Now, I feel like because crime and murder is a genre I really enjoy, I always love videos like this. Of course, for me, these stories are entertaining, but for the families involved, it's obviously the complete opposite. It's dreadful. Your life has this missing piece that never truly gets filled, and I honestly don't know how someone could cope with that. So, with all that being said, these are the top 10 scary disappearances that remain unsolved, part 2. Starting us off with number 10 is Brandon Lawson. 26-year-old San Angelo local Brandon Lawson was married to Ladessa Lofton and had 4 children. On August 8, 2013, around midnight, he got into a fight with Ladessa and left the house to go to his dad's place. Unfortunately, that was the last time he was ever seen alive. 45 minutes later, he called his brother Kyle, claiming he had ran out of petrol on the highway. A few minutes later, no one had any idea what happened, but Brandon made another call, only this time it was to 911. The call featured Brandon saying things like, "I ran into somebody and that he was in a field and he needed help." When Kyle and a police officer finally got there, they both saw his truck on the side of the road, but there was no sign of Brandon. His keys were gone, so was his phone, but thankfully the truck didn't seem to be damaged at all. All of a sudden, Kyle got a call from Brandon, but the signal kept going in and out. All he heard was that Brandon was 10 minutes away from the truck and that he was bleeding. And that was the last time anyone heard from Brandon Lawson again. No activity has been reported on any of his cards, no outgoing calls. Apparently he was chased into the field, but by who? Nobody knows. Coming in at number 9 is Mayumi Arashi. This one was shared by Reddit user SheepFloof, who told the story of 27-year-old Mayumi. One day she left the house to meet up with a classmate and just never came home. Her older sister Yoko then called this classmate, who claimed this meeting was never planned and they had never met her that day. The Arashi family was distraught looking for their daughter, and what made matters worse was that Mayumi left a note in her room saying she had been betrayed and that she was sorry. At this point, officers had pinned the suspect to one of Mayumi's guy friends, and let's just call him A, just like that. Now later on, A called Yoko and admitted he had seen her the afternoon she vanished, and that if she ever wound up dead, he wanted to be in jail. The day after she disappeared, police officers followed A to a mountainous area where he was seen carrying 2 cans of juice, never to be seen again. The case started blowing up and her dad was interviewed about the case, and during a computer interviews, viewers noticed a note behind Mayumi's door that no one had seen yet. On it, in Mayumi's writing, it said, "Don't trust what Yoko says." Dun dun dun. Was it the sister? We don't know. Bobby Dunbar Part 1. Now this one is actually insane. Now back in 1912, the Dunbar family took their kids and went fishing at a lake in Louisiana. His parents decided to stay back while the uncle took the kids fishing. On the way back, at some point, Bobby got separated from the group and the uncle only noticed when they finally got back. The family searched for him all over. The police looked for him for 4 months, but to no avail. Eventually, officers found a man called William Cantwell Walters who was traveling with a boy that looked a lot like the Dunbar boy. William's story about the boy was pretty sus. He said his friend gave him custody of their son, that his name was Bruce Anderson. The Dunbars were certain that Bruce was actually Bobby, and officers transferred the custody of the boy to them. When he was reunited with Leslie Dunbar, he even shouted "mother," but it doesn't end there. A woman called Julia Anderson saw the story in the newspaper and arrived in town to claim the boy was actually her son, Bruce. Going on number 7 slot is Bobby Dunbar Part 2. Julia's arrival spiced things up a big time. She claimed she had given Bruce to William for a 2-day trip to visit his relatives, and she had never given him actual custody of the boy. When the boy was put in front of Julia, he didn't recognize her at all, and she him, which is again very sus. A kidnapping trial ensued, and no one was really on Julia's side since she had already had 3 kids out of wedlock, 2 of which had already passed away. And think of the context, it's the early 1900s, people were judging her hard and questioning her character, and I mean, it was the time, so I'm not surprised. Sadly, Julia wasn't even that well off, so she didn't have enough money to keep the court battle going, so the child ended up staying with the Dunbars. However, in a shocking turn of events, in 2004, Bob Dunbar Jr. did a DNA test which showed he was not related by blood to his cousin, the son of Bobby's brother, Alonzo. So the boy was not a Dunbar, which begs the question, was he Bruce Anderson? And what really happened to the real Bobby Dunbar? Now, number 6 is false information. This case was shared by Reddit user Guy in Florida, who said back in 1971, a woman in Boca Raton, Florida, reported her daughter is missing. Investigation led officers to find that the girl's boyfriend was missing too, and so was his van, which made them think the two lovers had run off together. Very Romeo and Juliet. Now, at some point, the mum hired a private investigator to look for the two, and she was eventually told they were both living in San Francisco. Another PI told her she actually had a grandchild, but none of it made sense. The mum was supportive of the relationship, their home life was completely fine, she just couldn't comprehend why her daughter would cut off all contact for no reason. It wasn't until 2000 that she finally found out the truth. There are quite a few drainage canals in South Florida that drain the Everglades into the ocean, and a lot of them are freaking deep. That year, a canal was dredged, and inside of it, they found the woman's daughter and the boyfriend inside the submerged van. So I guess this one is solved, but for a long time it wasn't. Coming in at number 5 is RICO Harris. This 6'9" former Harlem Globetrotter basketball player had definitely had his hardships in life. RICO suffered from a lot of hard substance abuse earlier in life, but had been clean for a while and was finally getting his life back on track. In 2012, RICO started dating Jennifer Song, and the two began their long-distance relationship. By the end of 2014, things were pretty serious and talks of marriage were being had, so the two decided to merge their lives together, and he moved to Seattle for her. A few weeks after moving, he went back to Alhambra to see his family, and Jennifer said he just went to get some closure. On the way there, RICO was completely fine. He met his mom and a brother, and things were left amiss. He didn't get what he wanted out of the conversation and left that night to go back home. At around 10:45 p.m., he called Jennifer and told her he was going up to the mountains to rest, so he hadn't gotten much sleep all night. At 11:15, he turned his phone off, and no one has heard from RICO since. Imagine what Jennifer's going through. Like, how does your boyfriend, soon-to-be fiance, just disappear and never tell you where he went? Did he kill himself? What happened? At number 4 is Angela Hammond. The year was 1991. 20-year-old Angela was engaged to Rob Schaefer and was 4 months pregnant with their child. On April 4th, she dropped Rob off at a barbecue, and an hour later, she used a payphone to call him. While they spoke, she saw this creepy man circling the block a bunch of times in his green pickup truck. He got out of his truck and was looking around for something with a flashlight, and Angela asked if he needed to use the phone, to which he said no. Suddenly, Rob hears Angela scream on the phone, and he rushes to the payphone in his car, not knowing Angela's kidnapper was driving past him in the opposite direction. She yelled for him, and he reversed abruptly, breaking his transmission while he did so. And sadly, his car broke down and the truck got away, and with it, Angela Hammond. The search for the truck began, but to no avail. Police started questioning Rob since he had no witnesses to corroborate his story. But he did agree to a polygraph test and passed, so he was telling the truth. Rob was cleared, but Angela was never seen. Following on 3 slot is STACY ARRAS. Back in July of 1981, 14-year-old STACY, her dad, and 4 others went to Sunrise High Sierra Camp on horseback. It was built as a tourist destination 20 years prior, and it's the final stop in Yosemite's Mountain Chalet Loop. When they got there, STACY told her dad she wanted to take photos at the nearby lake, and although he didn't go with her, an elderly man from the group did instead. At some point on the way there, he got quite tired and sat down, so STACY carried on the journey by herself. A few hours later, the man returned to the camp without STACY, claiming he waited for ages, but she never walked back. A tour guide in the group said he saw her from afar, standing on a rock about 50 yards south of the trail. So there's no way she could have gotten lost, but she was never seen again. Did she accidentally drown in the lake? Did she in fact get lost? I mean, the lake was only 1 bluff away from the camp, but she was only 14 years old. Maybe the sun was setting, it was getting dark, and she kind of just lost her way. Now, number 2 is Kelly Sue Achternacht. At the end of September 2008, Kelly Sue was living with her daughter and husband, who she had had a troubled marriage with. She left work at 9:30 p.m. to go home, but she never made it back. At 2 a.m. that night, her car was found utterly destroyed and on fire only 3 blocks away from her house. But the route it was found on wasn't the one that she normally took home, so already the situation was odd. Personality-wise, Kelly Sue was bullied as a child and therefore had self-esteem issues growing up. She was also clinically depressed and stopped taking her medication shortly before her disappearance. Was it a suicide? Maybe she burnt her car to make it look like she had gotten into an accident just to restart her life somewhere else. We will never know. And finally, at number 1 is Jalik L. Rainwalker. Now, Jalik grew up in the foster home. He was constantly moving, had no real parental figures, and was born addicted to crack cocaine because of his mother. He was known to throw violent temper tantrums, and it was so bad that they'd actually scare the kids around him. At the time, he had been living with Stephen Kerr and Jocelyn McDonald for 5 years, and they had legally adopted him. But the family was unconventional. They lived without running water, they had electricity for only a few hours a day, and the entire family slept in one room. On October 23, 2007, Stephen called a crisis hotline to reverse the adoption because Jalik's behavior had become too much. Jalik was sent away to a previous home but came back the next day, but by this point, Kerr no longer wanted him around the house or around his children. On the night of the first, Jalik went missing from his paternal grandparents' house while Kerr was meant to be watching him. He left a note saying, "Dear everybody, I'm sorry for everything. I won't be a bother anymore. Goodbye, Jalik." The note made it seem like Jay had run away on purpose, or perhaps he had committed suicide since the boy was suicidal. Authorities, however, refused to believe that Jay had written the letter, and despite living in a rural area, his body was missing. If he had died or committed suicide, it would have been easy to find him. Stephen also became a person of interest since there were so many inconsistencies in his story. Footage caught him leaving the house in his truck during the time he said he was asleep. He refused to also take a polygraph test, but it was pretty obvious he was behind his foster son's disappearance. And that is it for today's video, guys. Honestly, I tried to include people on this list that aren't just very mainstream that we've all heard of, and hopefully I did that. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments below. As always, I'm your host, Iman Hassan, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!